What were you saying, Brett?
Oh, when I saw ads for WB Mason watching baseball as a kid, I was
right,
so
them
sure
too.
WB Mason was like some sort of food company or like they made pickles or something. So when I learned that they sold paper, I was like, what the fuck?
They do look like one of the like Coney Island hot dog companies or
Yeah.
Yeah,
something.
they have so much like
Do they have retail like locations?
I don't think
I
so.
don't
I've only
think they
seen
do.
trucks.
But it's like, why are they advertising on right field? Like,
Like the most expensive right field in the world.
Right.
I think that might have just been from an era when, like people had to buy paper for their offices, from
I do
somebody.
like Yankee Stadium has one sign in the outfield that it's like really small and it's like the Morningside Heights like dental clinic or something. And I'm
Yeah,
like,
they-
okay, that's a real one. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know how you guys scrounge that up, but
It's Alex!
it's episode 268 of View from 202 on the heels of the first loss of the 2024 season, 3-0 to the Columbus Crew in Columbus. It's the same four of us as usual. What's going on? What happened? Finally in the loss column here, as part of our our little consecutive match streak with Columbus and Miami, top of the table matchups here. The Red Bulls fold for the first time. We have some personnel changes, but what's the story with this game? Why did the Red Bulls come out so flat? What do you guys think?
I mean, it's unfortunate that we have to reset a counter of how many days it's been since we've I guess lost a game. My interest in this season has waned dramatically now that I know it can no longer be an invincible season.
It's over.
It's over.
Yeah, Shield is gone.
Yeah.
Pitchforks are back out.
So, it was good while it lasted.
I guess it's still technically been like, 100 days in between losses for the
Right.
Red Bulls or something. Set a new record. That's a unique amount of days in between a loss. 101 or whatever it was. But yeah, the Red Bulls...
That's number wing.
Well, that's taking me back. The Red Bulls put out a familiar-looking 11 against the Columbus Crew with really only one significant change. Andres Reyes coming in for Sean Nealis, who had a knock. This is a game where, full confession, I wasn't able to watch it. So I'm going to be in more of a asking questions type role tonight, as I had family in town, so I had to attend to those needs. But was this a case where the Red Bulls did not execute well on the day? Was this a case where we met our perfect opponent? Was this a case where the team was actually just lucky the first three matches of the season? Or is it a little bit of all the three combined?
I was suffering from an eye infection this weekend watching this game, and it was
Only when you were watching the game, you got the eye infection.
right. Well, I was gonna
And the Red Bulls look like they played great.
Well, I was gonna say the thing that
through your eyesight.
the thing that pained me the most was watching the New York Red Bulls play a far superior team to them. I think in general. I mean that was just my assessment of the game. It's just like, yeah, we just played a good team, and we're definitely not as good as them.
Yeah, it was a real kind of reality check in that sense. Mind you, I would hope the worst kind of reality check, if that makes sense, because as I kind of said online the night of the game, honestly, Columbus looked like the best MLS team I've ever seen. Obviously they're the defending champs and all that. Had that sort of air coming into this and knew it was going to be a tough game and all those cliches. But man, they were just extremely impressive. Now, I guess the thing is that we kind of like Brett let off. I don't know if we know enough about this Red Bulls team yet to know how much of a test we really were for Columbus. Is I guess the place where things get a little less clear. Columbus looked great. Columbus looked like one of the best passing teams I've seen in the league. They were kind of toying with us through the whole game. I mean, just to kind of go through the body of it, I mean, yeah, there wasn't really a whole lot of nuance to it. Columbus just kind of dominated from start to finish. I think, not to go lean on the XG as an explanation of the game, but it was particularly extreme in this situation. I think we only had like maybe not even 0.1 XG or something. It was that much of a shutout, and obviously Columbus getting the 3 goals too, which is most important, dominating the possession and just really kind of olaying through the entire game. Just kind of being one step, one passive ahead of the press at all moments. And, to circle back to me saying that it's hard to know enough about this Red Bulls team yet to know just how impressive Columbus were. A good Red Bulls team is able to disrupt and stop even, the most daring and, skilled possession teams. I mean, I kept thinking back over the course of this game, watching it, thinking back to the, kind of rivalry days of the Marsh Red Bulls versus the Berhalter crew, roughly a little less than a decade ago, where that was, in that era of MLS, kind of the most cut and dry example of a, passing possession based team in Columbus, and then us playing kind of pressing car crash ball under Marsh, and kind of whoever kind of wanted it more or approached it better won the day. And it was a nice little litmus test in that sense. I don't necessarily know, again, not to repeat myself, enough about this Red Bulls team yet to know if we're the prime example of pressing football to test a team like Columbus, because it could just be that we're not very good at pressing compared to past years. Based off this game, there's an interesting thread that I was just kind of going over as we were preparing from a couple days ago that our friend Luca Corporente put up on Twitter that was kind of outlining some of the issues and some of the adjustments that Schwartz kept trying to make over the course of this game, formation wise, and eventually coming to the conclusion that we just might not be as fierce in the press this year as we were in years past, or at least we're not there yet. With Schwartz still kind of ironing things out. So I guess, that's sort of my big picture analysis of what happened in this game and how it colors the way we watch this team going into the next few weeks and how it shapes up over the course of the season.
Yeah. Do you think it's where it looked like we were certainly not effective at pressing and Columbus was able to bypass it? Was it a scenario where maybe just not even trying to play like that would have suited us better? Because it looks like, the 3 times we concede, 2 of them come from getting countered on pretty quickly. The first one is a long ball where we just they quickly send it over the top.
Just like in the first play of the game, that kind of strikes it out as a thing that Columbus figured we would be vulnerable at, and then capitalized.
The second one is us getting caught with a high line, where the Columbus forces a turnover and just makes one pass to beat us. And the third, of course, is on a set piece. Would it be accurate to say we were punished for pressing, or is it more that we are just rely on pressing to create our chances and establish ourselves, and we weren't able to do that, and Columbus toyed with us similarly to how they would toy with other teams?
I think both. I don't know if you would disagree with me here, but I think, well, I mean, to credit Columbus, like you were earlier this episode, they were just very neat and tidy. All their passes just kind of like along the ground, like right to the right, foot of the player that they wanted to give it to. These diagonal passes, just like cutting us up like
just
warm
to build
butter.
on that. Yeah, there's been some stuff. I mean, I think some of it might have even been before this game, but especially after, there's been a few kind of charts going around that like Columbus has some of the best, passing metrics, depending on what you would use in like not just MLS, but like the entire world, kind of like top 10, 15 leagues when you put it into a basket. And it was like, I mean, not to like kind of, I insist that I'm not being hyperbolic when I say this, but I mean, it seriously looked like watching, like one of the like classic Barcelona or Ajax teams of years past, where it was just like literally just perfect one touch control moving around. I mean, every player was able to move it quickly. Every player knew what angle to take. It wasn't just one guy quarterbacking. It was just full team passing. It was really impressive.
Yeah, and the listener knows my disdain for Pep Guardiola, but it felt Guardiola's Barcelona, like watching Iniesta and Messi just kind of like ping it around players who were kind of like hapless and standing there.
Like, Nagby is at the center of it and gets the most plaudits for good reason. But like, I mean, it was every player in the team
knew exactly knew what
runs to make, knew what angles to make, knew what knew how to just take a quick touch and move it. And I mean, and I mean, it's like, there's been a lot of, I mean, Columbus has some decent players, obviously. I mean, Cucho and, Nagby and some of these other guys are some of the, obviously more talented players in MLS. Rossi has been a huge weapon for them to add too. But also, I mean, kind of, they're not the only team that has good players in MLS. Sure. And kind of like, I keep thinking of what Brit said near the end of last year, or at the end of last year, when we were discussing Columbus winning the cup, where it's just like, Nancy showed up and, just turned them into this thing. It's sort of like, the manager kind of matters in this league. You can have, you can fit all the different guys under the cap and the allocation money you can, but it doesn't really matter unless you have a manager who, has a clear idea of what he wants to do. And it really seems like they have that in Columbus.
Yeah. And like, it's kind of like that goal that we got caught on a high line. Kind of any team, it feels like, who would be caught on having a higher line in general, just because the way that they pass, they have so much faith that they can get it to someone running on.
Oh, and they bait team. I mean, it was the type of team passing that baits teams forward.
Right.
Which
exactly.
I don't know if it would even just be us who gets baited that bad.
Sure. But
so it's hard to tell. Yeah.
But like every time, and this, I don't even know how you would tactically try to avoid that with kind of a high line, high press system, is you have a wide runner come in and you just weigh the ball perfectly behind the line. Like that there's no way you avoid that kind of if you just play it and execute it right. And that just seemed to be what Columbus were doing consistently. But we were also just really messy too. We weren't really positioned in a way where we would win maybe second balls or to really drive pressure.
Well, the team got, I mean, like I mentioned earlier, where just, the very first play of the game, they sent a long ball that they were able to, pull a shot off of. And it's just like the team got spooked really quick. A lot of the younger guys who were requiring, on in midfield, like Edelman, like Stroud, started just kind of playing it long, started, sort of booting it. The confidence was clearly lacking in the rare moments where the team was allowed to kind of set up and get on the ball. And I mean, you just would hope that they have no choice. We have no choice but to hope that this was just an example of running into an absolute juggernaut of a team and, getting, I guess even in that respect, though, I mean, they were obviously going into the game and some of the press conference comments, I mean, they knew Columbus was one of the bigger teams in the league. They knew the way they were going to play, and they still did look, a little bit like a deer in the headlights to some extent. And I guess that is somewhat of a concern. But yeah, in the meantime, all they can hope is that, this really was the toughest game that they're going to face all year.
And Columbus really, the way that they pass on the ground, kind of in like with pace in terms of tacticality as well as, just like, I think pure pace, doesn't suit our a physical press, because I think lately when we've been playing the Texas teams, we've been able to capitalize on kind of lofty balls that go into the midfield and try to generate pressure off that, because it creates time to make a physical presence to, anyone trying to win that or to like place yourself into the second ball. But, if you can't really control that, if the ball is being controlled, at that kind of level.
Yeah,
you
it
know?
sounds like a big contrast with Dallas, who during the game, Cork, you pointed out that Dallas was being particularly lazy about clearing the ball right into the center of the pitch over and over again. And then, Dallas had that one right center back that number 22 was having a nightmare of a game. It sounds like Columbus didn't have a guy stepping incorrectly all night. And I did not appreciate what kind of run they're on right now. I'm looking back and going back to September of last year, they have only one loss. And it's something like 20 matches. And then if you go back to July, they only have 3 losses in that whole stretch. It's you have to go all the way back to like May of last year to see a genuine dip in form. And even then it's not that pronounced, which is crazy, because like they ended up finishing 3rd place last year. It obviously they won the cup, and I was on record on here saying that I thought that Columbus was maybe being a little too clever by picking up Nancy, that maybe Nancy was just a good guy in a good spot in Montreal, knowing the system, knowing his players really well. But boy, he seems to have really excelled, it's crazy that, it's encouraging that someone like him, who's just been lingering in like the second, as an assistant in an MLS club for a while.
I think he was just like an academy coach for a while.
Yeah,
in Montreal.
Can just really like come out of the woodwork and really assert himself on this league. It's very impressive. And just looking at their squad as well, they've got some good players, like you said. Rossi's a good player, Nagby, of course. But this isn't
top to bottom stars.
This is not like Miami, or something. According to the, for what it's worth, it's like publicly available payroll. Columbus is like 11th in payroll. So, top half to be sure. But, they're this is not a case where they have 3 mega DPs or anything.
And they're coming off a season where they had to fire a manager. Not like the team was in like great shape when Nancy showed up.
Yeah.
And he didn't need like 3 seasons of whining about needing gourmet players get his team to play how he wanted.
They also got rid of their 10, right? Who was
Zelerian.
Yeah. It was like budgeting issues.
Right.
So they really started from the ground.
That's true. Yeah, they've got a solid chunk of players that are in that like what we used to call the TAM range or whatever. But it's certainly an interesting comparison with the Red Bulls, and maybe something to aspire to for the Red Bulls. But it's a good point saying that he didn't complain about needing like gourmet players or anything, because I think it brings us back to sort of a recurring theme that we've had in the last few years, where it's like, what is the benefit of aspiring to have a system that requires that you run on such a thin knife's edge? If it's so hard to
Find the right player,
like maybe that's a real downside. Now, so far, Schwartz has not really run his mouth about that too far, like the way Struber did. But we'll see how we respond to this setback. And we'll have some depth challenged this week as well. We'll get to all the international call-ups and everything too, but we also have Daniel Edelman lose his head a little bit and get a second yellow. So we're gonna have a diminished midfield from just that alone, which is a shame that at the 95th minute we couldn't just make it like 30 more seconds or a minute to get through without getting a suspension on top of all of the injuries and call-ups we're going to have this next week. But that brings me to another question, which is, even though we're getting pummeled at like the 65th minute onwards, did it seem like the team had sort of given up on the field, or how was the vibe in that respect?
I was kind of hopeful after we went down 2-0, be like, oh, like I I feel like you often see the true character of a team when you're down 2-0. There's 30 minutes left. See what you can scrunch together. And they kind of failed that test immensely for me, I think.
Well, you definitely saw their true colors.
Yeah,
With
like
the
they
red,
did.
and then Duncan. I feel like Duncan just had a terrible game from the jump. And the last thing, which I think is also just on the highlights, is he just makes just a very poor, unnecessary tackle right outside of the 18, like after getting beat, and gives up a pretty bad like free kick. Nothing comes of it, but it's just an example of how our team acted in the last 15-20. But I don't know. I didn't really have a whole lot of hope after we went down 2-0.
Right.
I don't think we ever really found our footing to begin with. And that started all the way at the back too. I thought, like, you know, you mentioned a few other players trying to find stability. I think two others kind of come to mind. Forsberg, I really didn't think did a particularly good job being that stabilizing force in the last 30 minutes when there could have been maybe a way to build ourselves back into the game. And then also just, you know, Cork, you mentioned younger players struggling with this sort of pressure. I think Isla is another example of that, of just somebody who didn't have the chance to really build out of the back, and he just looked very nervy more often than not.
Yeah, and that's that was the other end of what I mentioned earlier, where it ended up kind of, you know, Edelman and Stroud being on the ball in those situations where the team was kind of getting themselves regrouped in the rare moments where they recollected possession. And yeah, Isla was just getting completely cut off. And there's been a few, I think it might have been Luca also, who had a thread about how Columbus, I mean, we talked about their passing play and just been gushing about that so far, but they were playing some pretty good pressing ball, or pretty good pressing, you know, structure in the moments where we had it. And I think a big part of that was, noticing that there was, if there was anything that was, new about this Red Bulls team that Columbus maybe didn't know from the past, it was kind of the gimmick of Isla playing it on the ground more than this team's seen in the last few years. But then, I don't know, you gotta hope again that it's not, kind of a blueprint for the rest of the league now, that if you cut off Isla's ability to distribute, there's not really a whole lot of ideas in that stage of the build-up. So,
I mean, for both Swedes, I think really they totally marked Emil Forsberg out of any kind of. There was that one possession that really struck me when he kind of got the ball and he had to turn around like 3 times and there were just no options.
I remember.
For him.
I know the exact play what you're talking about. I couldn't tell you the minute or anything,
Right.
but
I've
had that stuck in my head too.
And I think that's like very indicative of like the pros and cons of having such a central figure in our.
Oh,
like,
totally. Yeah.
Like
It was-
what happens when you like take him out. And
It was
this is what
very
happens.
symbolic. Yeah.
Is that he didn't have options. He couldn't even create options for himself.
He was literally like running in a circle for like 20 seconds.
And he had like
Yeah.
space too. It's not like he wasn't like totally like panicked, and he did well with what he could. But yeah, like our midfield totally outclassed. I think really shows how much improvement we have. I think getting a second yellow card honestly was in line with Edelman's rest of the game. He just kind of very
hanging on for dear life.
inconsistent. Yeah, you could just
throwing
tell
himself
that
into
like
things.
at any point something could break. And it happened.
Was Amaya's substitution in the 57th minute out of like injury, or was it just him really just struggling in the game? Do we know?
I mean, struggling, and I guess it's kind of a thing where, once you're in a situation like that, a player like Amaya, isn't very useful. I mean, when both when you're getting all your passing service cut off and when the team's trying to scrap their way back into it.
Right. I mean, he seems like the type of guy who would be supplementing Forsberg in those moments.
Yeah,
And he just
exactly.
didn't show up for the first half of the game, overwhelmed by Columbus, and then just being left with Stroud. And Edelman is really, not much of a supporting cast.
Right. I do wonder if that's more of kind of like creating more options, because I feel like the only option we ended up making that day was like a weak Cameron Harper shot on goal,
Yeah, I mean, Harper and then Burke.
Right.
Was that Yengar?
And Yengar,
and Yengar,
debut
yeah.
of Yengar were the main attempts to kind of change the tide, but didn't really. Yengar just, I don't know, he looked like a guy. There was the kind of the best best moment of the game, I think it was Yengar, but it was where Forsberg kind of cut through late in the game and then sort of reversed the ball off to the side that Yengar got on, but then kind of hit it straight at the keeper. I mean, it's a pretty low bar for saying this was the one good chance you had, but what it is what it is.
Yeah, not really enough to make an assessment on him as a player, I don't think yet.
Who did he come in for? Was there any sense of where he might play, or was this just like trying to claw back?
He was just kind of vaguely on the right side of the attack.
We kind of dropped into like a 3 in the back,
right?
Because Nealis came in, Dylan Nealis came in, and then I think we also put Yengar out further up on the right, and I think Duncan was underneath him. Did Duncan play the full 90, right?
Maybe.
I can.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Right.
It really doesn't.
Yeah. Corey Burke played up top. Any comments on his starting debut for this season? He put. Wait, is that true? Sorry, I'm misreading this.
Manuel started
Manuel
started. Burke came in.
Yeah, read that backwards. Sorry,
60th,
but he got a whole 30 minutes though. The Manuel. Morgan partnership started again. So correction on that, my bad. But yeah, sounds like a harsh lesson, a harsh setback for this team.
Yeah, I mean, to kind of, just touch on the other angle to it that you introduced it with, Brit. It kind of was the first big test against a team on the road, a team that isn't, rotating for Champions League, a team that kind of has its full deck and is playing it. And, didn't go that great. It was the first big test, and now second, probably even bigger and more challenging test is coming right here if we want to segue. But
yep, we're playing Miami this week, and it's going to be an interesting one. It's at home. But I think arguably the headline here is how many people are going to be gone. Namely 5 Red Bulls players, I think at least, are going to be gone. We have, speak of the devil, Corey Burke, who's going to be called up for Jamaica. We have Noah Isla, I believe, who's getting called up for the Swedish youth national team. We have Emil Forsberg, who's getting called up for the Swedish adult team.
For Swedish adult team that doesn't have a meaningful game for over a year.
Sweden over 30s.
And apparently, apparently he's not even scheduled to start.
Yeah.
So little odd that the guy who's supposedly devoted to winning MLS Cup with the Red Bulls is dipping out on games to do this. And apparently there was that little news snippet where he gave an interview overseas where he said that he and Schneider were talking with the league about postponing this game so that everybody could go play internationals, which, what the fuck? On a lot of different levels.
Yeah,
I think that was kind of the reaction to it, and it obviously didn't happen, but what the fuck is he talking about? That's a thing that's going on?
Although,
was he like joking? Like, it doesn't.
I hope so. I really
feel like
do.
he might have wanted to play that game seriously, but at the same time, I kind of agree we shouldn't be playing during an international break, I guess.
Well, that's a whole other thing. But since we are, since it's on the schedule,
like you knew, going into this.
Also, yeah, you could just. You didn't qualify for Euros. You can just not. Go.
Yeah. I mean, I said something online about it, and there was somebody in my replies just going like, he well, and I guess this leads to another news story around the league, but someone's like, he's legally not allowed to turn down a call up or whatever. And it's just like, okay, I'm sure that, yes, that's in the FIFA bylaws or whatever. But also if he's just, if he's supposedly this respected elder statesman of Swedish football, it shouldn't be too hard for him to say, hey, I'm going to take a couple camps off to focus on helping this club, especially when there's Sweden did not qualify for the Euros this summer. They're not playing a meaningful game for a long time. Why is it so important for you to come play these games, especially when it's apparently even more important for you to play against Messi? And again, that's a whole other angle to this, not to pile on, but just to MLS games are more important to you when you're playing against Messi. I don't know. I don't like guys talking like that for a lot of reasons, but
Also, hasn't he played against Messi before?
you would kind of think if he's supposedly just been there and done all. As,
Who did
as
he play
we've been
for
told.
before Leipzig?
Malmo.
Oh,
But he's
okay.
also been in the Sweden team for like 10 years.
Right.
Like, I don't think they've met in a tournament or anything, but maybe there's a friendly in there or something. But yeah, also just like if he's supposedly just, this giant luminary of the game, he shouldn't be getting all starstruck about Messi.
He's actually leaving
Right.
because they're scheduled to play Argentina.
Yeah, like
Right. Well, speaking of that,
well, and then just the other to close up my thing about how he's not legally allowed to turn down a call up. We had another thing in the league where Robert Taylor with Miami, who's part of the Finland team that's qualified for still qualifying for the Euros, and he's kind of part of the choice selection. He made a big announcement and whole thing this week about how he's turning down his call-ups right now because it seemed like more of an angle where he was saying I'm fatigued from playing for Miami recently, but it was also just like I can't give my full effort to the Finland team, so I'm going to take this one off. And everybody's like, okay, cool. Glad you handled it professionally like that, so
Right.
Weird.
To round out our call-ups, Carlos Coronel was called up to the Paraguayan national team. That reminds me, it is funny, that it makes sense. But like whenever you see a post about Coronel, or half the time the team tweets out with like the Paraguayan flag, they're like, oh, our Paraguayan shot stopper or something. And it's like, well, yeah, I mean, yeah, sure, he plays for Paraguay, but like, yeah, I don't know. He grew up in Brazil.
Well, because they were calling him the Brazilian Wall before that, I guess.
Okay.
It's just like, I guess you got to call him something. That is a country that he's associated with. So
We couldn't just pick out like whatever the goalkeeper equivalent of Messi is and chant that.
Right.
Paraguay Messi.
yeah,
But yeah.
How well do you think Cornell knows Kaku?
Is Kaku still making the Paraguay national team?
that's a good
these
question.
days?
Last time I looked at his thing, I don't think he had a ton of caps.
His team did just knock out Al Nassr, right?
Well, and he was injured for like a year or two.
Yeah.
Kaku, so.
The Inter Miami, our opponent, is also going to have some absences, notably the man himself, as he's got to Messi has to go to different award shows because that's right, folks, I'm talking about the dog from Anatomy of a Fall. The damn dog has to go and bark on the red carpet, which in many ways is what Lionel Messi's been doing over here, hasn't he?
Hey now.
Yeah.
Hey now.
So,
That was pretty good.
Lionel Messi has been hurt.
It took me a lot. I read the headlines for that Anatomy of a Fall thing, and I was just like, what? Because I didn't watch Anatomy of a Fall or understand that there
Missing out.
was
It's a
a
good
dog
movie.
in
It
it.
is good.
Yeah.
I only seen the headlines. I was like, why are they not letting the Messi? If he was in the movie, like, why would they not let the soccer player?
Yeah, the headlines
the
were
Oscars?
a little confusing, and I appreciated it because it didn't even seem to be in like a clickbaity sort of way. Like,
Right.
I just got the vibe that whoever was writing the headline is just a super film nerd who like has no idea that there's anyone else called Messi, which was great. But I don't know if you watched the Oscars, but there was a great bit, cutaway gag, nice practical effect where Messi was clapping with the dog.
I did see the
And,
behind the scenes for that.
I would say seemed more in tune with the presentation than any of the Ballon d'Or presentations Lionel Messi's been at. Seemed to be more present.
I can't believe they were promoting Bark Night for the Red Bulls so far in advance.
It was Bark at the Park at the Kodak
Oscars.
At the
Theaters.
Oscars.
Yeah. But Messi is injured. He was going to be with Argentina anyway, but he's injured. So if you haven't sold your ticket yet, it's time to lower the price.
Get those Busquets fans. I guess he's going to be the only main guy that they have.
Yeah,
right?
'cause I'm looking
Suarez
now.
is out too.
Is he just hurt? Because that's what I'm checking. I see that Drake Callender is called up for the USMNT camp. Facunda Farias is called up to the Argentina U23s. But Suarez is just, so old at this point. Leonardo Campana is called up for Ecuador. Diego Gomez is called up for Paraguay. David Ruiz, one of their young homegrowns, is called up for Honduras. Kamal Miller, that's a guy, is called up for Canada. And then Taylor, as you mentioned, has now said never mind. He's going to still play for Inter Miami, or just not make the trip with Finland. So, yeah, I guess Busquets is still the biggest draw here. Maybe Suarez, depending on injury status. I do recall seeing that he was hurt, but who knows? Maybe we'll see later in the week. The Red Bulls, for that matter, in addition to all of the call-ups, Van Zer, I think we should assume is going to still be out. Also, does it matter if he's not? Serge Ngoma never existed. And Daniel Edelman will be suspended. So, kind of a big asterisk here.
Didn't Edelman get called up?
What?
Edelman got called up.
He did, but then
okay.
he'll serve a suspension afterward.
Right.
Oh, he has to serve it after.
So it is sort of here, which is it's still not good because as we've been warning for these first couple of weeks, even with the good results, what happens when one of these guys goes down? We're gonna find out to some degree here, although with so many moving parts, it might be hard to say. Another transaction that happened with Miami in the last couple of weeks is they traded DeAndre Yedlin to who? I can't remember, but they offloaded him to Cincinnati for some cash because, you can break the rules. The money doesn't matter, but you have to eventually trade someone, seems to be the vibe. So Yedlin is no longer with them. So I'm getting the sense that this is going to be two very disjointed teams, not at full strength. It might be hard to learn or devise any lessons here, but it's an opportunity to sort of bounce back at home.
I would hope that our side is a little more motivated based off of pure pride and wanting to reverse the vibes from last week than Miami having all of their, caped heroes off, gallivanting somewhere else.
Yeah, going into this game, I'm a little bit less fearful than I was last year, where the vibes were, you could see it from a million miles away. It was so bad with everyone just being starstruck and just so minor league, from the players to the off-field staff to the comm staff. Everyone was just so doe-eyed and so pathetic. Sorry, but it was the most humiliating week of last season by far was the Miami game. Just absolute nightmare that we should never want to return to. I'm not feeling that coming this week. Maybe we got it out of our system. Messi being gone helps, but I also don't get the vibe from Schwarz or the other players, even though, Forsberg is going to be gone. I don't get the vibe it's going to be quite so bad, even with what we were just saying about Forsberg seemingly being a little bit more starstruck than we would expect. So, yeah, I'm hoping that they'll take a chance to get stuck in and assert a little bit more pride here. I don't have a season ticket still. I haven't renewed or taken the lunge back in, and with ticket prices being so high, I haven't even thought about looking for a ticket for this game.
Do you want one for $175?
That's your going rate?
Right now it's what it's listed.
Right.
I'm negotiable.
All right.
I'll bring it down to $165.
I'll let you know.
For buddy.
I'll
Sweetheart, right?
Discount, yeah.
I'll keep the Ticketmaster page open for 10 minutes and think about it. But I think it's an opportunity to rattle off a win and bounce back. It's going to be interesting to see what happens in the midfield with Edelman gone too, because we
can't really run the dime. It's almost impossible.
Right, we have basically Frankie, Peter Stroud, and that's it. We who fills in for Forsberg and Edelman. Genuine question.
Bento Estrella, he's the key to all this. Wiki Carmona.
I mean, Carmona is probably gonna have to be
have
one
to,
of the guys,
right.
but I don't. I mean, he's, as we've said previously,
A great
he's
enigma.
he's a confusing player. I don't really see either of those positions to be a skill set. I mean, what does Wiki Carmona do? I want to be positive, but
I know,
like,
yeah.
what,
I mean,
what?
I said, yeah, it's been 4 years now. He pings a good ball here and there, but yeah, a lot of weirdness in between, and it's like not yet. Again, not even to say he's bad or it's like a lot of mistakes or whatever. It's just very kind of weird generic player. Doesn't really beat anybody on the dribble. Doesn't really carry it. Just kind of hits a good ball here and there and doesn't give it away, but not much else.
Man, remember CCJ?
Wow. I really do forget about him. What an odd player.
Well, it's like I kind of get like the not necessarily the same vibes, but like what do we do with him kind of vibes,
Right.
With both.
But Carmona's like a shorter version of CCJ.
Yeah.
And
Worse,
CCJ wasn't that tall.
Right.
You know?
Also, like technically, probably not as proficient, but
Right.
No, I don't know.
I just get the sense. We
I'd
would
love
see,
to have Caceres for this guy.
Yeah. CCJ would like, he'd be able to brush guys off. I don't know.
Honestly, CCJ was the last bit of muscle that we had in this
Right.
midfield. A guy who, there were some games where it worked less well than others, but guy who would, let you know he was there, have some presence in the midfield. Whereas I don't really think Edelman and Stroud in this group right now really, intimidates anybody.
yeah, no one is him.
No.
Yeah, Stroud maybe could use hitting the weight room a bit.
At the
Surprised
beginning
he
of the
didn't
game,
over the off season.
he was giving me the vibes at first of like, oh, if he like works on his craft, he could be like the dark arts guy. But he's like a little too scrawny to even pull that off still, unfortunately.
Yeah.
He does love getting tackled by someone though, He's constantly getting tackled.
And just to repeat something we've been saying this season so far, seems like a decent like fourth or fifth midfielder on the squad.
Right.
Like, I think his position in the depth chart last year was about right. And it's a little.
I mean,
weird.
I'm getting to the point where I've seen enough from Stroud at this point to say that he's, and again, this lines up with what you're saying, Britt, where, I mean, it's perfectly fine for like a guy who's, fourth, fifth, maybe even third on your midfield depth chart, but really just kind of the most kind of generic central midfielder, just a guy who he makes himself available well, moves around well, nice clean touches, moves it around, but not a lot of dimension to his game. Can't really dribble or carry it. Doesn't, unlike Carmona, can't really hit it long that well. Just does the simple things decently, but not a whole lot else there. And I don't, and like we started this little conversation with, not a whole lot of physical presence either on the defensive side of the ball.
And he does the simple things decently, but he doesn't do them great either.
No, that's what I mean.
Yeah,
like that's why I use decently deliberately.
Right,
But,
and it's like it's in that sense that he's inconsistent. Like a great midfielder would just be like totally unnoticeable in a consistent fashion.
which I think Stroud gets like that in his good games, but yeah.
You're right, but those are like USL.
Well, I don't watch USL, so I've only seen him in MLS. I don't watch fake games at a youth field. So
Yeah. And final thing I'll say about Carmona as well is that when I think about his appearances for the club so far, I just think like tank. It feels like he puts his head down and he pushes forward with a burst of energy and sometimes hits the ball really hard. But maybe I'm just like still traumatized from the Struber years. I don't know, where he just seemed to say go, like, run a bunch of steps in place and then just zoom up and yabba dabba do up to someone. Like that's what I think of. But I don't see it. Other than that, though, look, like we have literally like Cameron Harper, who's a wide player, Yengar, who wide player.
Same, like, I mean, again, not to belabor the point, but just, yeah, I mean, Yengar just seems extremely redundant with Harper as a guy in the squad, which hurts in moments like this where you need extra midfield bodies.
I have to say, like, too early to pass judgment on Yengar still, but gave me a lot of short Matthias Jurgensen vibes.
Yeah.
What does Matthias Jurgensen have left once you take out the height?
Well, I mean, that's what the vibes I got were, so.
Okay. Is he at least fast?
Maybe.
You didn't get to see in 30 minutes?
Maybe.
All right, it's been 30 minutes.
Ronald Donkor. There's a name some of the older Red Bulls fans.
I'm a big believer. I think he can fill that spot.
He's okay. Still only 19. Exactly. I feel like I've been hearing his name for like 2 years now at this point.
It's just because you're friends with me.
Oh my God. And
Steven Serwata is still around also, but he's technically only on a reserves contract. He's not good enough to be kept around for the big league team, but we are going to keep him around.
Hey, we need practice
for
squad
the reserve
guys.
teams, apparently.
But I'm not even being funny. Like, he may start.
I don't think
you would think he has to.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to start.
I mean, who else though? Like, literally, who else?
Morgan.
But central midfield.
Oh, I mean, he's not a central midfielder though.
Okay.
Donkor?
Oh, he's kind of like a winger.
Isn't he more of a central?
From what I've seen from him.
He was playing mostly like, I don't remember him maybe like attacking midfield more 10. I mean, he's kind of like a dribbler, but he was playing like more centrally.
Oh, I remember him more as
no.
I believe in him as a winger, so like count me out if he has to play in the Peter Strauss.
This is the team is this whole conversation is kind of to illustrate we're not out of the salad era yet.
Yeah.
Still a lot of salad.
The roster it's come much sooner in the season than I expected that we'd have to test out how shallow this roster is.
And how unbalanced and just weird it is.
Due to to the MLS calendar as well, there's like a not insignificant amount of games where you play during the international window. So you could say, oh, this is a particularly bad confluence of events, but this sort of confluence of events could happen for like up to 6 games, 7 games.
Yeah, it's something that you have to prepare for. And one of the, perhaps one of the shortcomings of not having like a single person with MLS experience in the front office right
Maybe
now.
Julian de Guzman can play central defensive midfield for us.
No, I mean, it's again, this is something that I've said on recent episodes too, where it's just very bizarre. And again, it's not to continue litigating the last, few years and the years under Struber, but it's just like so bizarre that, that was one of Struber's mantras that he's just, I don't have enough bodies in midfield. I don't have enough depth in central midfield. I don't have enough central midfielders. Well, he had like 5 or 6 guys who he couldn't even fit on the field at all the time and was doghousing people for fun. Meanwhile, now, fast forward, we're supposedly just the most deep and well-stocked Red Bulls team we've ever had, and it takes one suspension and we're completely fucked, and that then literally the most important position in the team.
Drew Yearwood would have been very nice to have for this game.
Yeah,
right. Yeah, because this is going to be this is going to stick around with Edelman's suspension. We're going to have like 3 games here where we're going to have a midfield problem even after Forsberg is back. Also, a nice thing about Drew is that it can be nice to have a player like that who is not going to get called up for England. Yeah. Or Felipe was never getting called up for Brazil.
I mean, and that's another thing where that's a big part of building an MLS team.
Yeah.
Like, and preparing for these international windows. And one of the trade-offs when you sign guys like Forsberg and whatnot is that, they're going to be liabilities when they have to do international duty.
Well, I was going to say,
these are all very real things to take into account when building a team, and we apparently didn't do it.
I was going to say earlier, if Forsberg were German, he'd probably still playing with us, right? Like, we should sign more like mid guys from big nations just for these things. Anyway, if they need a 10, I can do a really bad press, and you can call me the Korean Kaku.
I will go out there and I will die.
Yeah.
I will die on the field.
I would love to go out and die in front of everyone. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll literally decease. Are we going to see John Tolkien suit up in midfield? Wait, we don't have a left back then.
Well, Kyle Duncan can play left
and then
back
put
again.
Harper or
Dylan
Nealis at right. You know what? What if we just see Dylan Nealis play midfield at this point? Why not? You know, just
I can't watch a game with Duncan at left back. Like I don't know if I can do another
Maybe
one.
we put Duncan in midfield.
sure.
The most important decision that we're kind of glossing over here: does AJ Marcucci
Right.
finally
Start.
get to break through? The most important goalkeeping prospect in the history of the sport.
I mean, don't worry. Ryan Mayer is healthy again. So
Yeah, he was on the bench.
yeah.
So, I mean, we'll find out. Is this just a sinecure? Is he just the personality hire, as they say? I don't think so. I think we'll see our boy Ryan.
It's so funny that he's still around.
It's too bad that it's
He
the
could
week
have been-
after St. Patrick's Day. Actually, maybe
God.
it's good for us that it's the week after St. Patrick's Day.
He could have been gloving up for Ireland.
I mean, geez, it's at the point now where like every time Mara plays a game, you think like, oh, this might be the last time we
last
ever see
time
this
we see-
guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe that'll be an interesting novelty to this game if it ends up being kind of a mess otherwise.
If he suits up, there's a good potential for generating good like trivia for like overlapping players here. When's the
Right.
last time he played? Like
Last year?
He played a couple last year, I
Okay,
think,
yeah.
when either Cornell was away. I think Cornell had an injury at one point last year.
If
but-
we get him and Donkor on the field at the same time, that's like adding a good chunk of like potential degrees of separation, things.
Julian
here.
Hall.
Yeah, like that's like buying like like the whole things where it's like, oh, there's only two players that separate like Ty Cobb and like Justin Verlander or something, or like Nolan Ryan or something like that. It could be. We could be contributing to that here. This is history in the making.
There was a Red Bull heavy Immaculate Grid or something that was sent to me. If that happens again, I think I would try to look for that. Ronald Donkor.
We should
Ryan
do
Mara
an
link.
immaculate grid that's just all Ryan Mara. I guess he's like the worst situation.
New York City FC and Fire Department of New York.
All right. Well, I think we only need to cover that one game, right? We're just on a weekly grind. Yeah, because after that it's going to be at Orlando. We're really going for the themed like state by state thing right now, aren't we? Then after that we're playing Cincinnati, so we will have knocked out Texas, Florida, and Cincinnati, and Ohio, the most right wing parts of the country now.
Wait, were we playing on like the solar eclipse week?
Cincinnati.
Okay, is that in the line?
I think it actually is.
Maybe we
I
should
saw
go.
a thing
Maybe we
with the
should
line
go.
the other day.
I'm going upstate. It's because it's on my sister's birthday. It's like the actual eclipse.
Yeah.
So she like reserved Airbnb like 8 months ago.
Nice.
Yeah.
I
And
was
she
looking
got it
into
ahead.
maybe going back up to Vermont or something. There's still going to be snow in the mountains.
All right.
I was thinking of it.
It's the
Have
listeners
you
should know
checked
that
whether Breckenridge is in the eclipse line too?
The Aspens are so gauche these
the
days.
listener needs to know that Peaches is also stroking his like little miniature husky dog. When he says this. Hi, Luna. You're being discussed on the podcast. Well, maybe we'll watch the Red Bulls from our comfort in I don't know, Breckenridge.
I can't wait to watch them through the solar eclipse classes in Apple TV.
That's the ideal watching environment, actually. Yeah. Well, anything else for this before we break? All right, till then.